Thank you all for coming. This is the Selling to the Enterprise panel. My name is Chris Cera. I'm the CEO of ArcWeb Technologies. We are a product development company focused on the finance and healthcare industries, and our mission is to build products that people love. We also sell to the enterprise, although we are a services company. The three panelists today are all B2B product companies, so it's an important distinction and commonality to make, since the way that you sell B2B software and the way that you sell products is definitely different than the way that you sell services, which is what my industry is in. But we're going to focus on these folks. So Philadelphia is a great environment for enterprise software selling. There's a lot of startups in the B2B space. And Tom Moore, the former Select Greater Philadelphia chair, used to mention this quote, which I think is a good one. And then in Philadelphia, we are within 2 hours driving distance of 80% of the Fortune 500, which is one of the strengths of the region. And so that is why a lot of enterprise software startups thrive here. So selling to the enterprise is what this panel is all about. And so we will get started. So we'll start with panelists give a quick introduction of themselves, and then I will get started with questions. So we will start with Josh David from SetV.
Okay. Hi, my name is Joshua David. I'm the co-founder and CEO of SetV. SetV is a mobile sales enablement platform. We're about 2 years old, and we've been selling to enterprise companies. And so SetV basically is a tool used by mobile field sales reps to sell to their customers. We have a robust content management system used by the marketing people. We collect analytics on the field, pass it on to marketing, and then also we help the sales leaders to understand how their salespeople are doing out in the field. We did raise some money, and we're actually in the process of hiring more salespeople.
Great. Hey, I'm Chris Reynolds. I'm the CEO and co-founder of 12C. We're going into our 5th year. We're located right over on 17th and Arch. We build fan engagement experiences or applications for the media industry, specifically geared towards collegiate and professional sports fans. We integrate those solutions into smart TVs, smart set-top boxes, mobile devices, tablets, PCs, and metadata feeds, and looking forward into gaming consoles. We've always, since we founded the business, we've been selling primarily to enterprise kind of media players or Fortune 500 companies. So we really don't know anything different at our shop. Yeah, we're 16 full-time heads. We've raised to date about $3.5 million in capital, invested capital. Continue to grow. It's a really interesting time to be in our space. It's the first time, I think, in history where technology is really melding itself to professional sports in a really meaningful way, specifically for the consumer.
Cool. My name is Doug Baldasare. I'm the CEO and founder of ChargeItSpot. Started the business about 4 years ago. ChargeItSpot exists to solve 2 major problems. One is that consumers' phones are dying all the time, and we need our phones so desperately for every single thing we do every day. And when our phones die or come close to it, we become anxious, stranded, disconnected. It's horrible. The other problem that we solve is that traditional brick-and-mortar retailers are dying to find new ways to drive customers into stores, keep customers shopping for longer, and ultimately get their customers to buy more stuff. And so we put lock-away cell phone charging stations into retail stores that are free for consumers to use. They go up, they lock their phone away, they end up spending more than double the amount of time in store. They spend 29% more dollars while they wait for their phone to charge. It's free for the consumer, and the retailers pay us a fee to deploy these units into their stores. Given that model, we are very much a B2B play. Our clients are companies like Nordstrom, Neiman Marcus, Staples, Under Armour, Bloomingdale's, bunch of casino groups. We're based actually a block away. We're in the Bourse building. We're 30, including part-time and full-time. We've raised a little over $5 million, and I'm excited to chat more about enterprise sales.
So Doug, we'll start question with you. What percentage of your time is spent on sales, and how do you organize your schedule so then you can do sales work?
I would say about 30% of my time is spent on sales. That's varied. I'd say that's gone down over time, over the last 4 years. So closer to 50 or 60% of my time would have been in sales. when I first started the business and I didn't actually have sales folks working for me. And so I think later in this discussion, we're going to talk more about how to think about that transition between being the one and only salesperson in the company and when it's time to start to bring on new sales, additional salespeople to support. So I'd say about 30% of my time is spent on direct sales and able to leverage a sales team to most effectively use that 30% for meetings, for strategic sales discussions. How do I organize myself? I've gone through various iterations of staying organized with my tasks, given all the different responsibilities that you'll have, as a founder. Some tools that I really like, just started using Boomerang. It's a great tool to kind of be able to schedule and forget about an email. And then the cool thing about Boomerang is you'll be able to send an email, and if you don't get a reply within 2 days, it'll give you a reminder to follow up. You can set it to 4 days. You can set it to a day. So I use things like that to let me sort of forget about things that need to get done. I really like Yesware. I really like Reportive. And I use Post-it notes as well.
That's great. Our head of strategy, David Whitaker, also uses Boomerang for helping to schedule emails and whatnot. So Chris, for you, what percentage of your time is spent doing sales work, and how do you organize your schedule to do sales?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'd say, I scale a little bit higher. Probably closer to 40% of my time is still directly involved in sales activities. And then I'd say another 20% indirectly. So working very closely with our sales staff to make sure that things are kind of moving in the right direction across the board and understanding what we're hitting on and what we're missing. As far as organization is concerned, I'd love to be able to say there's a silver bullet, or I've been able to identify a silver bullet to really help me maximize my time. I use a number of the same tools that we've already mentioned, or that Doug already mentioned. When you're still a relatively small company and you work in a pretty flat, open environment, it's not easy to organize your time the way you'd like to organize your time. You still figure out a way to get things done. Optimally, I like to try to get all of my sales type of initiatives and calls done in the morning, so it frees me up in the afternoon. But now that we've kind of geographically expanded our business internationally, that doesn't always work as well. So, it really, I think, is a function of what you do and who you sell to. But yeah, I would definitely recommend Boomerang. I think it's a fantastic service, and we use me and a few other folks use it in the office.
Josh.
So I spend about 30 to 40% of my time trying to. We came up with a list of the companies we want to target around here. So we've been going through that list and trying to see which companies we can, if we know somebody, follow up with somebody, they can probably do the introduction. Just working through that list and trying to handle most of the people off the list. In terms of organizing, sales pretty much drives most of the things in my schedule. So if I have a sales call versus a development call, I'm gonna go to the sales call. And then when I try to send out, so when customers ask me, hey, when are you available to meet? I try to give them an open calendar because they can just pick a time quickly. And if I have to reschedule a meeting, I'm gonna do that. So that's how it's been working for me. Great so far.
Yeah, go for it.
Sure. Yeah, I think one important component to this conversation is, especially when you're less than 30 employees or less than 20, most of the sales that you've kind of closed to date were built on some type of personal relationship, right? Whether it was one that you fostered independently or an introduction that was made and that you created it, turned it into an account. And in a lot of cases, those accounts still want to talk to me, even with a sales support staff and a direct sales staff. So that's just one thing to kind of keep in mind. Even when you start hiring salespeople, your customers are still going to want to talk to you when things are going well or not so well.
So, question that dovetails into that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Holding them up, keep it. But how did you get your first 3 customers?
We got lucky with customer number one. Customer number one was Comcast, and there was actually someone that was working there at the time that used to report to me when I worked at Navtech or Traffic.com. And they were looking to implement a game center type solution for their Major League Baseball properties across the regional sports networks. And we had just deployed something here locally, kind of like in a beta environment. And he said, why don't you come over and see if, what you guys are doing is aligning with, or aligns with what we are attempting to accomplish here. And so that's what we did. So that was number one, and we got really lucky there. They asked us to kind of deploy this product by opening day, which is April 1st, and we were talking to them in the middle of February. So it was one of these kind of scramble type deals that we just figured out how to get it done. Customers 2 and 3 came through kind of this relationship that we started to foster and nurture with Comcast. The sports technology and media industry is really kind of a follower space, and so when some of these other companies like Fox and even Samsung for that matter saw what we were doing with Comcast, they asked to speak to us to see if we could kind of port this similar solution to their platforms.
Just a follow-up, you said Comcast was the first customer. Did you actually get the idea for 12C while you were at Traffic.com based on your conversations with Comcast?
No. We got the idea for 12C, definitely not based on the conversations that we had with Comcast, but we got we conceptualized our business because we had come from kind of the mapping space, right? And dealing with real-time data, large amounts of real-time data, and productizing that data for enterprise customers. And so we just kind of contemplated the fact if we had the ability to aggregate and distribute real-time sports data and productize it the same or in a similar way, that there was probably a business there.
Got it. I selfishly asked that because I was an ex-Traffic.comer myself. But Josh, your first 3 customers, how did you get them?
So we actually started selling in beta. And basically what happened was I reached out to somebody I know in an organization. And the purpose of that meeting was to see if the product, what we're building, is going to be a fit in that organization. And also to get some feedback from the person. And if that person felt comfortable with both of these things, they would hopefully make an introduction to somebody higher up in that organization. So the meeting went well, and we figured out there was a product fit. And the person was trying to set up a meeting with the higher up in the company. And at that point, I realized that one of our investors knows the person. So I contacted him, and actually my first sales call, I actually went with my investor, and we actually closed the deal together. The second and third was actually interesting because we were actually under a lot of pressure to do more sales. And one of our prospect investors pretty much said, listen, you're going to pitch in about a week and a half, and then I don't know what you're going to do, but you got to get a couple more customers in a week. And I believe in you guys. Go figure out how to do it. And at this point, the product was still it's a soft launch, and then there was one key component, analytics, which is a major part of the platform, was not quite ready. And basically, we decided to just flick the switch on and start selling at that point. So we called our first beta customer, and then this is how the conversation went. Hey, how are you? Do you like the product? Would you buy a product like this? Would you buy a product like this today? Would you pay X number of dollars? Would you pay for it right now, with the annual contract? He said yes to everything. So we're like, okay, great. We want you to be a launch customer. So that's kind of how we got our second customer. The third one was actually our first enterprise customer. It was Logitech, and I love Logitech because I've been using all their products, since I was a little kid. Really want to sell, this product to them. And as an entrepreneur, you're going to see this all the time. You know what? I really like your product, but you're missing this one feature, right? And how do you overcome that? So with Logitech, basically, after the first call, we discovered analytics was the key feature that they were looking for, which we didn't have, but we really needed Logitech to close the investor. So second call, we called Logitech and pretty much said, listen, we don't have analytics which you're looking for, but here's what I'm going to propose. If you pay for the product right now, we will deliver the product with analytics by the time you're about to launch, which was going to be in 60 days. He was still not convinced on that, and basically we actually showed him mock-up screenshots, reports on how this thing was going to come out. And then, finally, the thing that got the deal sealed was we pretty much told him, listen, you're going to directly input on how the analytics is going to turn out, and then this is going to be like a custom-built analytics for you. He loved the collaborative nature of the product development, and so the second call, we actually closed Logitech, and we actually did close the investor too. So, yep.
Great story.
Nice.
And Doug, first 3 customers.
So I'll talk about my first customer and then 2 other interesting wins, just since we already heard a couple of the 1, 2, 3s from 12C. So first customer was Whole Foods. Interesting how Whole Foods works. So that was August 12th, 2012 was when we deployed our first unit in the market. Whole Foods is a company that I'm really impressed with. They really live and breathe their mission. I'm not going to verbatim get it right, but it's something like being part of the fabric of their local communities. And what that actually translates to is that the individual Whole Foods stores make decisions on which vendors they purchase from, like down from the honey to the charging stations, right? And so we were able to, through a connection from one of my former professors who knew somebody at this one Whole Foods in Jenkintown, was able to demo a unit. And this was, again, just like Josh mentioned, a beta unit. It was really a minimum viable product. I rented a Ford Fusion, I think it was, drove it over, demoed it, and the store manager, our ally there, kind of convinced the store manager, hey, we're empowered to make local decisions, why don't we try it? And I'm like, yeah, let's just see how it works. Let's leave it. And then they're like, all right. And then I installed it and very quickly drove away because I didn't want them to have second thoughts. And then I came back more dressed as a customer and just observed for the first 6 hours. And we had 50 people charge their phone in the first 6 hours. So that was a fun. And then I got dinner at a nice restaurant and had a glass of champagne and then back to work. Two other interesting clients and kind of how we thought about building out our distribution of clients. And we were already in product development for our sort of current gen smart screen unit that's much, much, much better than our MVP. And we were asking these retailers to make a capital investment in this equipment that is pretty obvious to us that it's going to add value to their stores. So Urban Outfitters was our first real big enterprise client, and we convinced them just on the idea to try this in 5 stores and pay us a small amount. And we wanted to go to all their stores, at least more than just 5. And so one of the things that I realized was that, hey, these retailers they don't have a line item in their budget for cell phone charging stations. They're actually quite frugal. Typically, the adage is that the retailers have the power and the brands have the money, brands being the merchandise that are in the store. So like Nike, Under Armour, Samsung, whatever is the merchandise being sold, they're the ones driving all the marketing dollars. So the retailers are very discriminating with how they spend their dollars. They're not used to paying for cell phone charging stations. I knew it was going to drive an ROI for them. We did some initial research ourselves with interns and T-shirts and clipboards and observing behavior when people charge their phone. How much time did they spend in store? How much money did they spend? Comparing that to people who did not charge their phone. So we started kind of loosely with our own study, and Urban Outfitters yeah, that's interesting, but 2 problems. A, this was a study conducted by you. You're seen as biased. You said there's this great lift in dwell time and in purchase, but you're biased. I believe you're a high integrity company, but this is just how it's viewed. Second problem is there's a causation correlation issue where you might be looking at the behavior of shoppers compared to those who charge and those who don't, but maybe the people who were coming to charge their phone were coming for a longer period of time anyway, and that's why they charge their phone, and so you didn't actually cause a lift in their dwell time or their spend, but you were just correlated with it. So to overcome that, we ended up hiring and investing $40,000 to hire GfK, which is the 4th largest market research firm in the world, to do an independent sales audit. And so that got rid of the bias issue. And they came with a very clever way on how to get rid of the causation correlation issue. And so that was a very important element to get Urban Outfitters to expand their footprint and got us from 1 enterprise client to 18 enterprise clients. And so I kind of took up a bit of the time, so I'll stay with 2 if you'd like.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
So you just wait for the next question. So how did you learn sales, and do you do anything to improve your skills?
Yes. So I started selling at, I guess at a younger age, but officially, after undergrad, I was working for an 80-person venture-backed digital media company called The News Market, and I started as the chief of staff or the Sherpa to the CEO and founder of that company. And a lot of what she did was sales, and I helped her with her strategic sales, learned a lot from her. My dad is a serial entrepreneur. I learned a lot of tips from him. I learned a lot from a couple books. One is, it's an old school book, two old school books. One is called Selling to Veto, Very Important Top Officer. It talks about a top-down sales approach. And the premise is that it's much easier to swim downstream than upstream. So even if you go to the CEO and you get bumped to the CMO and the EVP and then the SVP, much easier to get to that SVP that way than going from like manager to director to associate VP to VP to, you know, to SVP. And it talks about strategies on how to sell from the top down. And then I love Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I think those two books, if you combine them, are basics. I think it's great. One sales trainer I absolutely love. He's like the master. Like, I am not worthy. Nobody I've ever met is worthy. MJ Hoffman, Jeff Hoffman. He speaks twice a year at Wharton. He speaks, I think, 4 times a year in Boston and San Francisco. I think 4 each city. And then you can pay for him for a day for like 20K, something like that. Like, he's very expensive, but if you can be part of one of these group sessions, he's the man. He'll give you very specific tips. So I really like him, and I go to see him whenever I can.
Great. Same question to you. How'd you learn sales?
Yeah, really no formal training. I've had a few jobs that were kind of quota-based. When I worked at Comcast, I worked in affiliate sales, and my job was to go out and sell their networks to other cable operators across the country. So yeah, again, no formal training. I think what's really benefited me kind of with the business to date has been kind of my excitement, enthusiasm for it, right? I think that's really difficult to duplicate, right? And it doesn't matter really, frankly, how much training you have if you can't speak clearly and intelligently and get people enthused about your products. I think that speaks volumes and moves the meter more than almost anything else. That said, there's always room for improvement, don't get me wrong. And so, you know, we're constantly kind of refining our pitches, you know, our presentations and kind of our approach. But you know, I wouldn't be overly concerned if you've never sold before, because you can. And you're constantly selling, right? You're constantly selling either to your partners or to your investors or to your, you know, whoever, right? You're always selling your business. And so, what was the second part of that question?
How often do you like sort of re-up training or, you know, sharpen the saw?
Yeah,
so
so I mean, I'm constantly kind of gleaming what I can from whoever it is. It really doesn't matter kind of what their level is within an organization or as some type of consultant or something like that. And so that's ongoing, right? Whether it's reading books or, you know, just, you know, paying attention, right, and listening and understanding what's working and what's not. But going back to something that Doug noted as far as kind of selling from top down, I think a lot of that is contingent on, you know, price point too, right? So certain decisions are made at certain levels within organizations that require, you know, CFO sign off, right? And so the closer you can get to the CFO's office and get, you know, the right manager or right executive to buy in to push that sign off through, the better off, you know, you'll be. Now, if you're selling another kind of off-the-shelf software as a service platform that's, you know, $1,000 a month, it doesn't require really more than a manager's signature. So it really depends on more on the cost of what, you know, of the item that you're selling or the service that you're selling than kind of, you know, where you get into the organization. The price dictates where you should come in.
Great. Josh.
Sure. So Setvi is the first company that I've been selling a product. Before that, I had a consulting company in college, and most of the business came through referral. So early stages of Setvi, what I did was I tried to schedule a bunch of meetings with founders in Philadelphia in the B2B space that have done it before, who's in much later stage as I am. And also I looked for somebody similar to my background. So mine is a technical background, so I was looking to like transition from like a full technical to like a sales background, which was a challenge, still a challenge. So I met with so many advisors. They gave me great advice, and I met with Bob Moll, and you know, we had a great discussion. He gave me some great advice. In the end, he pretty much told me, you just got to go out and do it, and you're going to make mistakes. You're going to learn from it, keep improving it. So there's been a lot of trial and errors from there, and when I lose a sale, I try to go through every single point and see and analyze and see where I lost the sale, or even talk to advisors and see, okay, what I could have done better. If I win a sale, I try to like come up with the process, and then I try to replicate the process again, and then keep improving that process. I have some great advisors who I can talk to anytime. So yesterday I was trying to close this large enterprise deal, and we're trying to push it to a certain place, and I've never been there, so I reach out to my advisor and, what do I do here? So they exactly told me how to navigate the problem. And, we're kind of like moving forward with that deal right now. And there's also a great blog called SaaStr, SaaStr. It's by the person that sold EchoSign. And, it talks all about B2B sales. And also, a lot of founders here have been recommending the sales coach, so I'm going to try him out, see how it's going to work out.
You talking about Scott Messer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think I recommended him to him.
Yep.
So at ArcWeb, we use someone named Scott Messer, but there's a number of sales coaches locally, and I highly recommend people work with a sales coach if they're trying to really think about how to grow their company and struggling to do so. Next question. So, and I guess, Doug, more for you. Well, I think it's for all of us, but I'm just thinking about you, since you're like targeting a lot of retail companies and whatnot. Like, how do you prioritize and choose your outbound sales opportunities? So if you like walk through a shopping mall, how do you pick like Neiman Marcus over Nordstrom or?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's an exercise that we do. I'd say we refresh on it at least once a year to think about who our targets should be. So it's very specific for every business. I think some of the things I think about are where do we add the most value, which companies have demonstrated that they are innovative and adopting new technologies, and I'd say the third component is what are businesses that are growing versus not. So in the retail space, that's something you have to think about. I've had meetings with JCPenney, and I've had meetings with Under Armour. Under Armour is one that's growing really fast. JCPenney, not so much. A lot of their stores are closing, so it's not necessarily a company that makes sense for us to pursue. So that's like the third component. Like second I mentioned is who's adopting technology. Under Armour is a great example. Neiman Marcus is a great example. Nordstrom is a great example. And then that first component, value, where can we add the most value? That's more of a complex question. So for us, we have to think about where can we get somebody to spend more time than they otherwise would have because they're waiting for their phone to charge? And further to that, where is there a place where more time in that venue means more money spent? So like give you an example of a bad example, a movie theater. We're not going to get somebody to spend more time in a movie theater. They're spending 2 hours there anyway, and they're watching a movie. We're not going to get them to spend 4 hours and watch a second movie or eat twice the popcorn or something like that. So that's a bad place. Under Armour, okay, it's a place where you could spend more time, and if you spent more time, it would probably mean more dollars spent, more browsing, more buying more stuff on average. That's another component of how we prioritize. And then like there's a whole other area of our business where there are great environments where people need to charge their phone, like a movie theater, like a stadium, like the center court of a mall, where consumers really want to charge their phone, but you're not actually driving that ROI to the client, aside from being a great amenity in their venue. So in places like that, we're actually talking to brands like, think about Verizon Wireless or Sprint or Capital One or Amex, brands that want to communicate with consumers in new and unique ways, and we can become a platform for them to do that through our touchscreen interface. We collect mobile number at our unit. We're able to text message people. We're able to market to them on screen. And so imagine in a stadium around Super Bowl, Verizon Wireless branded units. And so then we have to go through that whole prioritization of which brands make sense to wrap those units in those third-party venues. And we think about which brands are spending the most, which brands care about lead generation, because that's a big component of what we do. And so we think about where do we add the most value, who's innovating, and who's growing financially. And that's kind of like the lens that we look through when we're deciding who to pursue.
Chris, you want to add anything? Or?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think just knowing your markets and understanding kind of trends in your markets are, critical. So just case in point, so Samsung and LG and even Comcast for that matter, but specifically Samsung's a partner of ours. And so what do? They sell smart TVs, right? And they sell more smart TVs around the Super Bowl today than just like they did when they started selling big screen smart TVs 10 years ago. It's the busiest time for them. But that industry or those devices have been commoditized, right? So like if you walk into a big box retailer and you say, I want to buy a smart TV, there's really no differentiation between the products, right? But if your partner or your customer is in the equipment business, you need to understand kind of how they're positioning their products to differentiate against their competitors. And so services is a big kind of driver in that space. And so what additional services make sense to the buyer that's buying a smart TV to watch professional football, right? So having that kind of industry knowledge and depth of your customer and also the market and understanding what needs to be there is kind of critical. But even kind of zooming out for a second and just thinking about some of the other, just speaking specifically about our business, some of the other industries that we serve, but like the publishing industry, which has been taking a beating for the last 12 years, right? Digital publishing, newspapers. They're doing everything that they can to retain their audiences, right? And so they need to be able to demonstrate that they are forward-thinking and have interesting product offerings that are going to retain and actually get people actually not to pay to get behind a paywall to access certain content. And so, what type of products do you need to kind of develop and sell into that market and at what price point? But knowing that you have a captive audience because they're all, kind of desperate to retain their audience, if not try to grow it.
Josh, you want to add anything? Yeah. Prioritizing them.
So basically, we just look at the sales goal, see what we got to hit for the next quarter or what do we have to hit, and then depending on who we're targeting, see where they are at the sales process and try to go after them. Some of them are low-hanging fruit, some of them are going to take much longer. So depending on where we are with the client, we try to organize based on that and just go after them.
So there's about 5 minutes left. So I want to go for some audience questions. I don't know if there's mics, so I'll just repeat the question, and then we'll go from there. So go ahead.
Thanks. And quick question, sometimes when you get those first sales, it's timing, hard work, but often luck. So my question is, once you get into the scaling process, how have you guys evaluated, do you go with the content marketing strategy, email strategy, ground and pound, just kind of hit the phone, hit your target audience using LinkedIn? What was each of your stories, I don't know if you've gotten there, about how you started to scale the sales process and what that trial and error process looked like?
Is it how do you scale the sales process using marketing and lead generation? Yep.
Right? Lead generation is going to cut the sales cycle significantly. Like, what's that look like?
Sure. So I'll take that first. Scale, right? So we're all trying to do the same thing, which is scale our product offerings across the largest possible audience that we can. So it kind of lends itself to two things. To your first point, your first sale, great, right? But there's probably a tremendous amount of customization and high touch and hand-holding involved in that process. So how do you systematize that process so you can scale, right? And how do you productize so you truly can scale? So that's number one. Making sure that you do that first, at least in our case, has been critical, and I think kind of is for everyone else up here. Second, I can't speak. The industry that we serve and sell into is a relatively it's a large market, but a relatively small industry. And so industry relationships are kind of the most important thing that kind of move the needle in our business more than anything else, and fostering and nurturing those relationships. But also obviously, any type of marketing opportunity that we can that's feasible and makes financial sense for us, right? We will participate in. So conferences, other types of award opportunities, and speakership type of opportunities have really worked out well for us. We're not going to go spend a tremendous amount of money on a CRM solution right now because it doesn't make sense. But it might for Doug and it might for Josh. But step one truly is productization, making sure that you have a product that can scale, and whether that's kind of a self-provisioning product offering that someone can go log into and license, or how many steps does it take to close a customer with your existing product stack?
We spend a lot of time outbound first, so this way we can see who our ideal customer profile would be to target in terms of marketing, and once we understood that, we could actually do blogs or content marketing. So to go after, we don't want to waste time right in the beginning with marketing. So we spend a lot of outbound sales calls first.
Yeah, just adding, I think like one of the first things that you have to think about is like kind of what Chris touched on about how wide of a universe of industry players is it, and how many companies do you need on board to be a big scaled company? And so similar for us, there are a lot of retailers out there, but we're really focused on the multi-hundred or multi-thousand store chains. So like Rite Aid's got 4,600 stores. TJ Maxx has 1,100 stores. Just getting TJ Maxx at all stores is great, right? And then like plus you just need to add a few. So like that's very specific to our business. And so what we've done is we've hired really good people who are smart sellers who are, and it's not a volume game for us. And that speaks a lot to like, what's the profile of your business? Like we have high ticket item, large sales that are people have not yet ever paid for, right? It's completely new, to an industry where there's limited budgets and a lot of stores. And so we focus our sales strategy along that. If you're doing like, if you look at another business like, you know, just using a random example, Marketo, where they are selling more of the $1,000 a month, $2,000, $5,000 a month subscription services, you can have a, you know, much more automated email marketing, more sort of to a mass universe of buyers, whereas I care about 100 buyers, and they're all, you know, in these top retailers. So,
Another question. Yes.
Hi, my name is Rizania, and I'm working on an analytics-based platform that uses artificial intelligence to streamline talent acquisition process. So I'm getting ready to launch my beta in January, and my question to the panel is actually I have two questions to the panel. First is, how did you acquire your first beta client? And second of all, did you charge your beta client?
How did you acquire your first beta client, and did you charge them?
So no, our first beta client we did not charge. We're in beta mode right now with a new product, with an existing customer that pays us a nice sum in licensing fees annually, and we're not charging them for that because it's more important for us to understand kind of the market feedback, so we can take those learnings and apply them to the commercial version of that product.
How did you acquire your beta?
Oh, I'm sorry. Just knocking on doors, frankly, just establishing relationships and kind of presenting them with a product offering that we thought made sense for them to integrate into a website at the time.
I would just say, as you're thinking about who your beta customers would be, find somebody that's a great reference. Like, don't charge them. It's like small money, right? It'll be a few $1,000, $5, $10. Like, it's not a lot of money that you're going to make or lose by charging them or not charging them. Just figure out what other kind of value can you get out of them. Is it a great brand that people admire and respect in the industry? And do you have a client there who's willing to sing your praises and be your champion? And if you can find those couple of things, I think it's worth not charging them.
Yeah, so a press release, that's what you'd want to get out of it, and then a reference on your website as well, and then be able to point people in that direction.
I was just going to say, just talk to people around here. I'm pretty sure you might be, fit for somebody here, or they might know somebody that you could probably be a fit for them. It's just reaching out to people and see if you would be a fit for them, or if they know somebody that's going to be a fit. Just keep trying. You're going to find one. We didn't charge our first beta customer. They actually decided to pay us. That's what happened. Sometimes a lot of beta customers were a referral to, new customers, or they added a lot of credibility to what we were doing. So when you get your first beta customer, you might not want to charge if you cannot, and then you might be able to get more customers saying, "Hey, this company's using it. This is how they benefited. Here's a case study from that. Use that to get more people."
So we are out of time. Just as a quick administrative update, we are in snack time until 3:10, and then Bob Mal comes up, Learnings from Artisan Mobile. So thank you all for joining, and thank the panel.